if I just give them more time back, what do they do with that time? And so I want to make sure I can fill that time with the net new to the organization.
Hello and welcome to Bit by Bit Leadership Conversations. I am your host, Carolina Milanesi, and today we are talking about the PC market. And what else could we be talking about when part of the industry is in Taipei for Computex this week? I am joined by somebody who knows a thing or two about PCs. I'm joined today by Tom Butler, who is VP of Worldwide Commercial Portfolio and Product Management at Lenovo Intelligent Devices. He has done this for over 20 years, which means that he's been through a cycle or two in the technology world and helped enterprises navigate really that transition. So he understands the perspective that comes in from CTOs, CIOs, and CEOs when it comes to where they want to put their money in technology. Tom, is obviously an amazing pleasure to have you.
Oh, Carolina, I couldn't be happier to be here. So thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's been a minute since we actually talked about the PC market and this thing that I think is called AI that people mention lately.
Yes, it's a bit.
But what I really want to focus on today is really getting to the nitty gritty of where are your customers at when it comes to AI and understanding not just AI and technology, but AI and people. And I want to start with this moment, which is, it's earnings seasons as well. And so we are seeing some of the signal coming out on the PC sales. And this market, boy, oh boy, has it not had up and down over the past 3 years. We had COVID, so the surge, then the slump after, and now we're talking AI. People are still a little bit confused about where AI runs and why it should run where it runs. What are you hearing from the real people, from your customers?
Yeah, no, and you mentioned sort of the cycles or the surges, and it has been a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, you think about
Feels
coming
that
out.
way.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're sort of like, oh my gosh, hang on, to a degree. But you think about COVID was this first sort of this macro cycle that started a big wave or surge, irrationally or not because of a technology, but because of a worldwide pandemic. And so that led to an oversaturation of devices in markets. So then we went through the trough, so to
Yep.
speak, and we were modeling coming out of this already because if you think about COVID now, these devices rather in market for beyond their life cycle, the traditional life cycle, especially in an enterprise, is going to be a 3 to 4 year life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So every year they're going to do a third of their fleet or 25% of their fleet refresh. But they had extended that out a bit because they had over purchased during that time because you had to do sometimes, it was beyond just one device per, because you might have a desktop stationary at the office and then a laptop to provide mobility in a work in place or work from home situation. So we already knew this was coming. Then you compound that with really the market awareness of AI with ChatGPT launching in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of set itself up for, oh my gosh, we got this great time to refresh, and there's a great reason to refresh as well beyond just an OS transition or anything else. But the challenge has been, okay, so what? So what can I do with these AI PCs? And I classify what we're in now as we are in the AI era. We can just like put a pin in that one and move forward. Very much like what I experienced, and I'm showing my gray hair, but in the .com era, we moved
Mm-hmm.
forward into that era and that space. What do we do? Still trying to figure it out. We were trying to figure it out at that time. We're in that same motion of what do we do? And the challenge we've had, especially on the PC side, is to demonstrate the value of what you can do with an AI PC, because there's been this promise of what can come or this
Yeah.
vision, but then the reality of what's happening or what isn't there yet. And so that's been the struggle. So our customers now are being, I would say, more deliberate
Hmm.
in their purchase behavior and patterns, and they're really looking deeper into their organizations and driving a more, it's overused, but a persona-based profile or a
Well, you
performance.
know how much I
I
love
mean,
personas.
I was cautious, but a performance profile. What are
Yeah.
you trying to accomplish? What are your workflows and outcomes you're trying to deliver? And then let me map the compute to that versus put compute in front of you and hope for the best.
And I love that because, I was joking. Everybody who knows me knows that I hate personas.
Oh
But
yeah, that's
the
why.
way that you are talking about it is the only way that I think we should talk about
Yes.
persona, which is
Yeah.
not really, oh, you're a marketing person. Here's what you do.
No,
But is
absolutely.
that's your workflow, right? What do
Yes.
you do
Yes.
with your PCs? What you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you require from a computational standpoint? So I like that that's where your customers are going.
Yeah.
But you have obviously a very broad set of customers.
Yes.
You provide
Yes.
to education, to the public sector, to
Mhm.
large, small, and medium enterprises. Are they all kind of moving in the same direction at the same time, or what are some of the differences that you see depending on where you're selling into?
Yeah, so I mean, if you give me those are good ways to break down the market because enterprise, I mean, they're all moving at a different speed. Short
Yeah.
answer. So large enterprise is definitely out front. They are doing more active pilots, trials. They're leaning into where they can see AI deliver productivity gains. And a lot of it is short-term tactical because they're looking at, workflows. Can I add more automation or more intelligence or more insight into existing workflows? It's not a lift and shift over necessarily yet because
Mm,
that's the harder part. We can talk about in a few moments. But that's where enterprise, I think, is out front. Public sector, they're a more conservative set by nature because they're limited somewhat by governance, by regulatory,
yeah.
and then budgetarily as well. So they are, I would say, they're watching, and they want to be in market, and they want to be in that trial, piloting, small deployment phase, but they're not there yet. And then education is probably the most interesting because they, of course, they have a lot of curiosity and interest in AI. If you look at like schools, universities, or schools within the universities, there's a lot of experimentation, and they
Yeah.
are collecting funding, but it might not be at a university wide necessarily or an
Mhm.
educational wide system. So you see a lot of, I would say, pockets of experimentation, not unlike what you see in the enterprise space. I mean, the net of it is they all want to be there, but you do have either funding constraints, security and governance constraints, and certainly from an enterprise wide, you definitely have the challenge of strict security control and governance, but also cultural change as you have to
Mm.
bring your entire workforce over to new platforms.
Yeah, and I'll get to that because I do think that oftentimes we focus so much on the technology that we forget the people, and the people
Yes.
are the
Yes.
core of all of this.
Yes.
I'm curious. I think you would agree with me in being a little bit critical
Mhm.
of the PC industry and how the storytelling around AI went. And I say that I think you would agree because you kind of alluded to it as far
Mhm.
as setting expectations and over promising and under delivering and kind of creating a lack of clarity really around AI. In your experience, what are the things that actually landed and helped your customers understand the value? What are the features of it or
Yeah.
capabilities that were easy for you to demonstrate and land?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge we faced in the industry was and this was collectively
Yes.
we all were pushing for this vision and promise of moving into the AI era and then bringing the compute that would give you that capability. I would say we when you talk about over promise, under deliver, or maybe over rotate
Yeah,
on a message or thematically, we talked a lot about the compute, the fabric of the compute underneath these devices, the additional the inclusion of a neural processing unit or NPU with the CPU, GPU. Candidly, no one cares. No one cares what's happening underneath the covers. And let's just be honest with ourselves. What can I do an instrument on the device that is meaningful or shows value? And that's where we've fallen short, the industry in general, because everything's happening in the cloud right now. And I'll use sort of this monolithic data center, this pillar, and we desperately want to bring it down to the client side because of the cost, the economics to run these models in the cloud, but also the security, the latency, but also the localization. If you can bring it out of the cloud down to the device, and the device starts to learn and know and perform for you, but is also aware of what you're doing, what you're on. I mean, right
yeah,
now, you and I are on a video conference call. My system should shut down all kinds of any kind of interference, inbound emails, inbound pings, etc. It should just know that and operate for me on that behalf. But we don't have that capability yet. It's the promise of what's coming.
yeah.
I think that's where it's almost we haven't gone through a disillusionment necessarily, but there's certainly okay, you're telling me all these things, you're promising this value, but I haven't been able to see it manifest yet because the so much of it is dependent on the software because we have to
Hmm.
have the software with a capability, with a recognition of what I can do locally on the compute, but also when do I need to stretch up into that cloud model as well? Because we know factually that you cannot run, of course, these larger models on the local
Of
device,
course.
but you can start.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, I've been a big proponent of, we talk about tokenomics or cost of running in the cloud. If you think about the data center, especially in an enterprise environment, you want that to be revenue generation
Mm,
because you either want it to be driving productivity inside, so you're getting efficiency, revenue generation, or you want it outwardly focused publicly and driving revenue generation. If you park a model in the data center where you're piloting, trialing, testing, but you haven't deployed at scale yet, then you're cutting into revenue generation. You're cutting into compute
yeah,
that could be driving
that
revenue
could. Yep.
generation. So now you bring it down to the edge. Okay, so now what do I do? What we have seen, this is a really long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we have seen now is more interest in the workstation class of devices because they have the compute to run these larger models at a test, pilot, or trial phase. So run it here locally instead of burning up cycles in the cloud. And when you're ready to scale and deploy, then you put it up into the cloud. So we are starting to see more, I would say, pockets of value return on the compute that you're putting in place at the AI developer level, at these pilots and trials. And so as they start to scale, then they can deploy out. So they deploy the model up in cloud, but then also they start cascading down to client devices, whether
Yep.
it's a notebook, desktop, et cetera. So that's what for me, that's where the interesting intersect is occurring. And it also falls very much in line with Lenovo's hybrid AI strategy. We're not saying go AI in the cloud. We're also not saying go AI at the client. We're just saying look across the continuum of compute, whether it's a laptop all the way to data center, and then determine where it makes the most sense economically, from a security perspective, from an efficiency perspective, and then try as much as you can protect that revenue generation that's happening in the cloud as well.
That is so simple, Tom. And yet we managed to mess it up
Yeah,
until now.
yeah.
No, but it's true. It's like you're talking about efficiencies, you're talking about security and privacy, you're talking about revenue. We oftentimes, you show a dollar sign to somebody and they come to the realization that things need to be done a certain way. The privacy and security part, Lenovo has been very vocal from the very beginning of this AI era about the importance of that. Is that landing as people are trying to figure out the governance piece, or it's still complicated?
No, it's well, landed, there's several vectors there, but one, has it landed in terms of like, can I take advantage of it on the device side? I mean, we've partnered openly or publicly with several security companies like
Yeah.
Buffer Zone, Sentinel One, that are taking advantage of the compute at the edge so they can run the continuous monitoring of the devices without having to pull up or point to the cloud. But if you talk about the security and governance of rolling out institutional wide AI, that we're not there yet. I think the industry is not there yet. We haven't come to this realization of an even, almost a template of how to do this.
Right.
Every company's having to find their own way, and that's been the biggest, I think, hurdle and challenge. We inside Lenovo face this as well. We're constantly looking at the evolving landscape of tools, of models that are out there, and want to use those. Yet we'll go to our CSO and our IT departments inside Lenovo, and they're like, "Whoa, wait a second. We got to make sure we can roll this out with security and governance controls to allow for protection of IP, because in the
Mm.
end, that's what we're looking at, which is that, again, back to that revenue generation.
Yeah.
I think that's where the challenge is.
And it's complicated because it's also very different depending on the size of the organization, where
Yes.
you're
Where
located.
you're located,
Yep.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned MPU
Mhm.
and the focus on MPU, and it's like nobody cares because now we're
Okay.
talking about GPUs and CPUs, and we're talking about a compute architecture. Um, I feel, and I wonder if that's true or just my gut feel, that a lot of what enterprises are struggling has a little bit to do with compute, but a lot to do with their internal processes and
Mhm.
workflows and reimagining how they work in the era of AI. Am I kind of right in that? And then on top of that, where does the PC fit?
Right, right. So, yes. So I short and broad answer, it's a cultural shift
Mm,
in the you gotta disconnect between the decision makers and the end users community, as well, within the organizations. The end user, the individual, is looking at what they can see and do and use publicly, and they want to come into the business and be able to do the same things, and the businesses are being outpaced by the public, because we as individuals are a lot more permissive, with public models than the enterprise can be, because they've got to
yeah.
secure and control. So there's a friction between the two, because there's this desire to experiment, trial, and bring in the latest, greatest from the end perspective, and then the IT or the CSO is looking at securing and controlling and manifesting. So there's also a flip of the script. Historically, when we talked about, like, you mentioned NPU again, or but NPU, GPU, CPU, no one cares. Often we started the
There should
conversation,
be a
and
logo. Like
oh,
we
it
should,
should, yeah,
it
no
should
one
do
cares, exactly.
stickers. Yeah.
That's pretty good. No one cares, but what you can do with it. So here's how we flip. I'd say we have flipped the script. Historically, I would come to you and talk about device and the experiences it would deliver and those outcomes it would drive. Just invert that. What outcome
Mm,
are you trying to accomplish? What experiences do those need to deliver? And then you get to the device or the solution. And that really is the way. And we talked, just moments ago, about this workflow focus or persona based, but it's really workflow focused, because inside each of um, the teams have different levels of compute needs.
that's right.
And just because you are labeled as a group, a working group, inside that marketing team may have a data scientist now that's mining the data, which needs high degree of compute, or a graphics artist, or there's you can't artificially just put a label on a team and say, okay, well, then you're just going to get whatever level of, we'll give you the base level of compute. It's quite the contrary. So that's why you've got to flip it like that: workflow, outcome experience down to the device solution you need. But then the cultural shift, and you touched on it just a moment, is we're going from improvements to new.
Mm,
And that's super, super hard, because you can bring in what's happening right now is these little pockets of improvement are happening with AI. Our meetings are becoming more efficient. I can get meeting notes captured. I can get documents created for me. I can get email summaries written out for me. I start my day by getting a summarization of all my meetings and emails that have flown through, and get a nice tableized summary. That's just an improvement to my day to day. That is not a shift over to net new.
Right.
That's the biggest hurdle, is going to be a reshape of the roles of the organization and the goals and the mission of the organization, because we're going to get all these net improvements,
Hmm.
but shifting to the net new, that's where I think is the next big leap.
And that's
Is
the real value, right? Where
That's where that's the value as we stepped into the AI era that we're
yeah,
all in now. That's really the value of what we're looking at. But culturally, shifting an organization, not just improving, but
yeah.
shifting over or reshaping, that's super hard, because that's going to take a tops down, demonstrated across all working groups, culturally training. It just takes time to do that.
Do you think, as we are on this, do you think that there's also a disconnect? You kind of talked about how us as individuals within an enterprise environment, we come from ChatGPT that runs my weekend to into a more constrained environment. I want to do the same thing. So there's that friction between what IT may allow me to do, but also what the CTOs, CIOs, CAIOs are thinking about, and what the middle management is thinking about. Do you feel that friction between, the C-suite and then the middle management?
No, I do, because the middle management has to keep the day to day running. And so we just talked about, you can paint this vision of reshaping, reforming, but that means time off task.
Yeah.
And even improving takes time off task. And then the middle management is having to drive the day to day. And so operationally, they're like, listen, you've asked me to do more with less always, and now I'm strained, and now you're asking me to stop for a moment, learn something new, and implement that. And so it's super hard, and that's why we see success are the companies that where you have a tops down support, but also I say a middle layer embrace of change. But you got to have that support. Say, we're going to allow for you to take a little bit of time off task, because we know if you can just take a moment, integrate, these new tools, these new process improvements, you're going to accelerate. So I've used this concept of a slingshot. So you
Hmm.
almost like you take a pause, but then when you release, you accelerate forward. And so it's that same model. And I love that, thinking sort of pragmatically like that, or with that model, because you have to acknowledge it takes a moment, but then the gain is worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I was at Google I/O. I don't even know, last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Time is
Time
just
flies.
different things. Yeah, and the head of DeepMind made a very similar comment about sometimes it's not about speed; it's about focus.
Yes.
Is not just about being fast, and I think it's hard with AI, because AI itself is so fast, right? We are seeing new models being released on a weekly basis, and how you feel that you need to keep that pace. But I think that sometimes, exactly to your point, if you're too quick in releasing, you're going to miss entirely, versus
Yeah.
taking that moment to really understand. Um, if you could pinpoint one thing that the industry got wrong
Oh,
as we introduced AI to enterprises in particular. I think the consumers kind of got to it because of ChatGPT, and then whatever,
yeah.
things happened. But from an enterprise perspective, there's just one thing that you would really pinpoint as, okay, like if we could have said this differently or moved differently or took the timing slightly differently, what would that be?
Yeah. No, I think candidly, I think the promise of AI being so transformative out of the gate was probably the most, the it was it selling that vision, but it was, you couldn't understand how to manifest that vision. And I think, and it's still, we're still underway. And I think that's the biggest probably challenge we have as we
Mm,
marketed this new wave of AI PCs coming in, and we talked about this value and this promise of this massive transformation. And then they purchased the devices and they went about their daily work because they're like, okay, so what? I'm not seeing anything of this. You've told me about all this great vision, again, the industry,
yep.
and you've talked a really good game, but I don't know what to do with it.
How do you come back from that
Yeah.
kind of breach of trust almost, right?
Oh,
You're
yeah. You're killing me with trust because one of my core fundamentals, and you know that. It's like, but no, but it's being honest and open. It's like, listen, we're learning together. I mean,
yeah.
you talk about the consumer could get away with trialing and piloting and quickly manifesting, and and it's funny. Every conversation I'm in with the CXOs, I'll ask them, say, what AI tools are you using personally? And they'll rattle off very quickly,
Mm,
with their favorites or multiple favorites, and they'll show me on their phone. Look, here are the three that I use daily, and here's what I do with each. And I say, this is super interesting. Show me what you do in the enterprise. Like, whoa, wait a second. We're right there together because I'll do the same thing. I'll say, let me show you my favorites here, but then I show you what I can do inside the corporate enterprise space. And the trust is being open and honest, first of all,
mm,
with them, and say, listen, we all are riding this wave, or driving to this vision, but the transformation that we're looking for kind of gets back to what I talked about a moment ago, which is, it's not the improvements, but it's the net
yeah.
new that we're going to be able to do. That we're still in, I'd say, undiscovered country to a degree. And what we can do along the way is help have that direct conversation with our customers. Say, listen, we don't have all the answers. What we can do is help and support them with the fabric of compute, that from that cloud down to the edge or client device, as we talk about that move towards hybrid. And then we've got expertise along the way that we can come in and partner with our customers. We also have a broad reach of, we talk to hundreds, if not we talk thousands of customers on a day-to-day basis globally, and we are learning from each of them. And we do learn, certain industries or verticals may be moving faster or trying something new that we can share across with common type customer types. And so it's part of it's just having open dialogue. I mean, the trust is, for me, it's foundational to what we do, and we must be looked at as trusted advisors. And I would say, you ask about, what did we miss as an industry? And it was that promise of, not immediate transformation, but really just, this great wave of new tech coming that could transform your business.
Yeah. And I like that because as critical as I want to be with the industry, including as analysts, because we all got overexcited about AI, and I am an AI optimist with a lot of caution,
Yeah.
but I am more interested in how transformational is going to be for us as humans than I am, um, concerned. But I do think that transparency, and I think as a PC industry, I think putting into perspective where we were coming from, looking at COVID and how we got there, and how up until COVID we were talking about how PCs were not longer relevant, and
Mhm.
everybody was. So I think there was such a an eagerness to prove that we were back and we're going to stay
Yeah,
back, right? As as an industry, that maybe we got carried away. But that transparency of, yes, this is transformational, but it's not going to happen overnight. And
right.
we are on a journey and we're going to take you on that journey. I think is absolutely critical, exactly to your point. I'm curious if people are still confused, and by people I mean IT managers
Mm,
are still confused in the same way now. You talked about how they're starting to understand workstation, cloud,
mm.
and client. I think the more they get in the ticket shock from the tokens used, the
Yes,
more they understand in that.
yes,
But
yes.
are they still, I'm curious, are they still confused as to when to buy, what to buy, or are they
Mm,
getting there? Because some of the fog, if you like, with the Windows 11 refresh and
mhm.
all of that is started to clear, and so
Yes.
you're starting to have less pieces of the puzzle that you need to figure out. So is it getting easier?
Yeah, easier. Yeah, maybe. No, I think what is happening, because you talked about sort of the fog is clearing. I mean,
Yeah,
what is happening is they are pivoting the way they purchase, which is purchase on workflow, not. I mean, persona really is a bad term because, oh, you're in marketing, you get this. Oh, you're in finance, you get that. You're in engineering, you get this. It's more about what workflows are you trying to accomplish.
yeah,
What has emerged, interestingly enough, is our customers are finding that a lot of the users they have issued the devices to are being underserved
mm,
by compute because as you start driving more of these AI workloads, you are taxing, certainly the CPU and GPU more than you
because you're no
historically.
longer limited by you, right?
Correct, correct. Because you've got this engine here waiting for you, and
Yeah,
so what we have seen actually emerging is the need for higher degree of compute. So they really are systematically looking at, okay, what workflows are you trying to accomplish now? And I think that's become the interesting piece where it was, listen, here's a general purpose device I'll issue to 80, 90% of my clients, and I've got an engineering device here I'll issue to the last 10, 20%. Where it's now, oh, wait a second, the personas no longer are applicable or a general purpose is no longer applicable. What workflows are you trying to accomplish? And they're starting to identify, I need a higher degree of compute.
yeah,
And so, but they're being more surgical about it as well. So they don't just offer one or two bands of compute performance, but they may spike some, and then the composite of that inside a group or a team can be quite different,
yeah.
where it might have just been a single issued asset prior.
We almost at time, and I think it sounds like we just spoke for 5 minutes, but it's been half an hour, and we could go easily for another hour. One piece of advice, if you were
Mm,
an IT manager, like what would you advise them, or reversely, if you were an IT manager, what is it that you want to hear? So
yeah,
both side, your advice, and the
yeah,
other side is, what do people need to hear?
yeah. So start with the problem, start with that outcome first. Start with that workflow first. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the outcome you're trying to drive to? And again, it's all gonna link back to revenue generation in the end, because that's what the companies are there for in the end. And so make sure that you've got it's focused on, was it whether it's productivity, efficiency gains, performant output, security of models, of data, but start with that workflow. So that's one piece. But then so that's sort of on the I'd say that's on the technology piece. The
Yeah.
workflow will lead you to the device or the solution you need. The second piece is cultural.
Mm.
You have to allow your teams to really to experiment, to trial. And so you've got to invest in your people on skills, training, governance, education, and you need leadership that can balance experimentation as well as protection, of course, of the company assets. And so they've got to balance. Leadership really does need to support this open experimentation. I'll give you just a a fun example I have inside my organization. I have a global organization, and I've assembled what I affectionately call the AI Knights of the Round Table. And I
I
and
love that.
so, I mean, I'm a nerd at heart, so but I have every team in my organization has a representative on this Knights of the Round Table, and they come together and they share best practices or use cases of what they are doing with AI for the business, but also personally, because I want to understand
Mm,
what they're doing personally and experimenting with. But for the business, I look for what's an improvement, but also what is new. What are you doing that's new that didn't exist pre AI? I think that's even more important. But also, what are you doing to improve? And then the reason we're coming together this Knights of the Round Table is that they then go back out to my organization and share across my entire team, my entire organization, and then implement because we're gonna siphon off the top, name it 3 to 5, 2 to 3 elements and roll those across, cascade those across, and really enforce use of those
mm,
so we can level up my team. So now we're starting to drive more efficiency. I say organically with the Knights, but then inorganically because they're going back out and sharing best practices. And so we're constantly doing this. So we're leveling up our org. But what I'm really looking for are the new. I'm looking for that because I'm looking at how do I reshape my organization, not
yeah.
just make them more efficient. Because if I just give them more time back, what do they do with that time? And so I want to make sure I can fill that time with the net new to the organization.
I love that so much because for so long we've just been focused on time saving. And exactly to your point, there's friction there from your perspective as a manager is like exactly to what they're going to do then, and
Yep.
from an individual perspective is like great, now they think that I'm no longer as needed as I was before, right? Because I'm taking half the time, or what else are they going to give me, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if you instead focusing on more rewarding
Yes. Yes.
work and different work that I and the other part that I love about what you're saying is there's nothing more, having worked in a large organization, that is getting people to click than something that is not coming from management, but is
Right.
coming from a peer, right?
Exactly. Exactly. You got it. You got the whole ethos of what I've done here.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope that people will listen
I hope
and
so.
start focusing more on that because it is a technology as well as a people and culture uh, shift that we're living with AI. I'm so grateful that you found time
Oh, it's my
to
pleasure.
talk to me today, and I look forward to seeing more organization following your lead and putting people and tech together. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Carolina. Great to see you.